So I'm slowly starting to get back in the swing of these things. There's a couple things that I'll just remind you of right up front. We do have the new website, heardandtellmedia.com, will one stop all this. So this is just a little informal one to see if I remember how to do this stuff. But two, I wanted to share a couple quick thoughts on Iran because I've been doing media on it, and I think there's a couple stories that are getting missed underneath everything else. So I don't think a lot of people watch this live stream. I'm going to record it. We're going to put it on all the podcasting platforms. We'll put it on the YouTube, everything else. If you haven't subscribed to Hertel Substack, do so. It's free. Doesn't cost you a thing. If you want to give us money, we'll take it, but it won't cost you anything. There's two big things with the Iran story right now that I think are getting undercovered, and I want to bring them up. And one of them came from I was doing Canadian media this morning for something that's coming out tonight, and then we're doing their network news forum is going to be doing a special on Friday that I'm going to be a panel guest on, and we're doing the pre-production on that, how we're going to approach it, things like that. And the Canadian very earnestly asked me of, is this how your government is supposed to work? And this has been a theme over the last so many 2 years or so that I've been working with them, and I just kind of have to sheepishly walk them through, like, well, here's how it's supposed to work, and then here's how we're doing it. And the question was specifically about Congress and War Powers Act and that sort of thing. And I explained, Congress has oversight and power of the purse, but they can't really tell the executive what to do. They can only course correct. They've abrogated their responsibilities for years and years and years. I bring this up for this fact because one of the two things being reported wrongly, in my opinion, is how long is this going to last and what's the strategy? There's no plan for this, and it's clear because of the way the Trump administration is conducting themselves. If they had an objective, they'd state it. They said regime change, but just killing Khamenei doesn't change the regime. It's just next man up. And then you have President Trump, who has came right out and said, we like the Venezuelan model, which wasn't regime change either. We took out Maduro, but right off the bat, then it's just next dictator up. So we didn't really change anything. Um, these are the problems when you get into uh, performance over substance. If we bomb regime change strictly through air power, this will be the first time it's ever actually worked. It can't work because we already know what the strategy for an American enemy in combat is. Whether it's the Chinese and the North Koreans in Korea, the Viet Cong in Vietnam, the Taliban in Afghanistan, all sorts of other things in smaller conflicts since. You cannot defeat the United States military on the battlefield. You can outlast the American people's appetite for combat pretty quickly if you just kind of stick it out. President Trump is going to have a very short runway in this conflict. One is he didn't do it the right way. He didn't get congressional approval. It's a congressional midterm. People who look at his polling numbers and want an excuse to push back against him and show some distance, they're going to have one in this conflict now. There's a lot of moving parts to this. His own popularity, people overblow how unpopular Trump is. He's roughly where he was in his first term at this same time. Remember, Joe Biden beat him in an election straight up. And if Joe Biden hadn't lost the ability to have cognitive speech live on TV, he may have beat him again, but he did, and Donald Trump is president. So the popularity of Donald Trump has always been both overstated and understated. But this conflict does not poll well. And if casualties keep racking up, and the expense of it keeps racking up, and other world affairs keep racking up, and if it affects the economy, we'll see things like gas prices and the stock market. His runway to do this is going to be very, very short. It's going to be a matter of days and weeks, not months. You can read between the lines on how the administration is talking. They already kind of want an off ramp and don't know how to do it. These speeches that were given by both the president and also Marco Rubio about the Iranian people rising up and this is their moment on the surface sound great. I've been saying that for decades. A lot of people that love freedom have been saying that. We want the Iranian people to be free, to have self-determination, to be out from under this terrible dictatorship they live under. But just bombing people, killing Khamenei and the decapitation strikes, and then saying, all right, y'all take it from here, that don't work. Remember, we've had weeks and weeks and weeks of the Iranian regime killing tens of thousands of protesters, so we don't even know what state the resistance, or whatever you want to call it, would be in Iran right now. They've just got done killing a bunch of them. Iran is a huge country. The news media in the West does a really bad job of explaining the complexities of Iran. There's 100 million people or so in that country, give or take. This is a geographical area that is vast and diverse and huge. Just go look at it on a map. This is everything from Iraq to Afghanistan to the foot of the Himalaya. Like, this is a massive landmass in a very strategic area. This is one of the oldest civilizations on Earth that's been around for as long as we have written human history to explain our own human history. The Persians are the dominant force, but they're only about 50% of the country. And then there's a bunch of other sects and demographics within that. You had President Trump today talking about the Kurds. Well, the Kurds are just a little less than 10% of the country. So thinking that they're going to be some kind of strategic force to run roughshod over everybody else is just begging for civil war, among other things. This is a complicated country in the best of times. And the Islamic regime came in as a minority, but they've been able to keep their oppression on top of everybody else. But this is not an Arabic Muslim country like the Western media keeps showing. These are Persians, and then you have the mullahs and the Ayatollah that have been pushing down on top of them for the better part of 50 years now. This is all complex stuff, and it gets back to what I started out talking about here of how long this is going to go. Not long. Um, all those examples in history of people outlasting America, even though the American military utterly destroyed them on the battlefield, is probably high on the Iranian leadership's mind right now. We can just outlast them. We can just hang in there. Unless they put boots on the ground, even if they did that, this is a huge country. How would they do that? There's no appetite for that. There's no support for that. It would be a bloody conflict. Um, if you just look at the map, you can see the difference between taking Baghdad and taking Tehran or wherever else you want to try to attack in Iran. It's a vastly different problem. The administration not having a plan outside of we're going to bomb them, and then somebody in the government, and this is almost verbatim what they're saying, is like somebody in the government's going to rise up, take over the government, and give us what they want. I think that's dubious at best. The Revolutionary Guard, which is going to take power in combination with the religious elements, they're not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to do business. One thing you need to understand too, in the coverage of this that's missing and goes to the point of how long this might go, is who the Iranians are shooting at. They've attacked Israel, they've attacked American military bases. By more than half of what they've shot off with drones and missiles has been at Dubai, has been at the GCC countries. Stop and ask yourself for a second, why are they, when they're being attacked and their military is being wiped out and being targeted, why is it so important for them to put missiles and drones into Dubai of all places? If you're not asking yourself those questions, or if you're one of these idiots online that are just saying, well, we're doing the bidding of Israel when the GCC pumps infinitely more money and influence into the West, in particular America, for influence than Israel ever dreamed of, you're not getting the full story of what's going on here. So how long is this going to go? I don't think it's going to go very long because I don't think there's an appetite for it. And if the Iranian leadership, whatever's left of it, decides they're just going to stick it out, or they're just going to cut some kind of paper deal, and then the attention span of America is going to go elsewhere, they're probably making a pretty safe bet and the best option that they have. Remember, we replaced a dictator in Venezuela, and we've already moved on to something else because we're busy with our military in Iran. We're not going to go back and hit Venezuela again anytime soon. So do they really need to behave themselves, or do they need to just do lip service to keep the Trump administration happy? This is the reality of what's going on in the world. And the history of the world is littered with not just America, but other countries doing business with bad dictatorships to try to keep a poor peace becoming a worse peace or open warfare. Well, now the shooting's started. The other terminology that goes on is this going to be a wider world? Well, Jim Garrity laid this out today. If you haven't read his piece, go read it. We have 14 countries either shooting or getting shot at right now, and that's not counting if you want to go into Hezbollah and the other Iranian proxies that may be around and want to do some shooting on their own. Lebanon looks like they've decided to act up today, so that might be another one. This has already gone wider. Now, inside of that, there's some stuff that the West has done a very poor job of explaining. The idea that the GCC countries, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, are now in a shooting war on the same side with America and Israel is pretty extraordinary historical stuff, and stuff that we'll have to look at go forward. And that brings me to the other thing that I don't think is being covered here very well. How do you get peace in the Middle East as much as you possibly can? Peace is an elusive thing. You get peace through superior firepower and superior diplomacy. America is really good at superior firepower and really bad at diplomacy. We're bad at foreign policy. We can't be consistent and coherent on it long enough to make it stick. But there's a window for peace, even with all these bombs dropping in the Middle East. What we just talked about, the GCC countries. Why is Iran attacking Dubai? Why is Iran attacking the GCC? Well, they see places like Dubai as excess. The religious fanatics hate places like Dubai. They hate what Saudi Arabia is doing, where they're doing a lot of sports washing on their human rights and they're doing a lot of money washing on their human rights. I understand that, but they do want to do business. If you look at what's happened in Syria since the Assad regime fell, those GCC countries are investing billions and billions and billions of dollars into it. Greed will probably bring peace in the Middle East faster than terrorism will, because what the GCC is discovering and what Iran is demonstrating by bombing them and missile striking them and drone striking them is terrorism's bad for business. And those GCC countries have figured out that business is really good and you can buy influence and you can buy importance and you can buy a seat at the table on the world stage. And business is good and terrorism is bad for business. So what would probably be a really good idea for Middle East peace is just lean into the greed. Now that's going to bring human rights violations in. We know the basically better than slave labor that a lot of places like Dubai was built on, like what the Saudis are doing. That's a separate discussion that's also important. But maybe we should just lean into the greed of it. And Donald Trump inherently leans into greed. And maybe greed will get you closer to peace in the Middle East, and the shooting wars have not gotten us any closer to. Something to consider. Something else to discuss about this Iranian stuff is Western media, and specifically American media, has no idea how to cover this. Um, American media specifically is so Donald Trump focused because it's based on character of the day, reaction, clicks, views, these sorts of things. I'm not knocking it. That's just the business model we all live in. I'm not attacking it. It's not a bad thing. But most of this conflict last couple of days, I've been watching almost exclusively overseas media and how it's covered. Um, we don't do a good job of understanding the Middle East, especially places like Iran, which is extremely diverse, a huge population, an ancient population. We don't do a good job of laying out even Americans' recent history since the fall of the Shah, how the Shah got into power in the first place, America's influence in that. And then the fact that we've been in shooting wars with Iran for almost 50 years. We can talk about Beirut. We can talk about in my lifetime and personal experience, a lot of the fighting we were doing in Iraq post surge and after, it was a lot of Iranians. It was a lot of proxies. It was a lot of people and proxies using Iranian munitions, especially their rockets and mortars and things like that. There's a lot of American blood that was on the Ayatollah's hands. But we don't do a good job explaining all that. It's really galling for the administration to not be able to coherently walk through all that. It's been rather amazing to watch that they just can't, even the stuff like, well, here's our rationale. Here's all the dead Americans that have been involved with Iran. You know, they do this loosey goosey. Well, they're going to get a nuclear weapon that we supposedly obliterated just last year, but we didn't obliterate it enough that we got to obliterate it again now. That's incoherent messaging. Of course, he should have got congressional approval. Of course, he should have put together a coalition. By the way, there's a coalition forming now where people are getting involved after the fact. There's no excuse for not putting that together ahead of time. Just come out with the truth. If you're the Trump administration, say, look, we know at some point conflict was inevitable. This was a preemptive strike. We had the intelligence to do the decapitation strike where we get the Ayatollah and a bunch of other people all at the same time. The Israelis were going to hit it. We went with them because they're going to react and hit anyway. Just tell the truth, because that's pretty close to the truth of what you did. Why not just say that? But we're doing this do-si-do of, well, they were going to get another nuclear weapon. They weren't that close to it. Well, they were going to attack us first. May have. They definitely were going to attack us after the Israelis hit a decapitation strike. So just tell the truth. The messaging on this has been all over the place. The rationale has been all over the place. And part of the reason is because, to loop back to where we started, they have no plan here. It's we're going to bomb. And here's the problem with this plan. Sometime probably in the next few days, or at least probably by the end of this week, we, meaning America and the coalition, has pretty much hit all the valuable military targets there are. Now they've got some hidden and they'll have launchers pop up and whatever, but we've pretty much hit that first list of stuff we were going to hit. We've pretty much blown all that way up. We'll have most of their navy destroyed. We have complete air superiority, except for Kuwaitis doing friendly fire, and that's a separate issue. Thank God nobody got killed. But that's all part of war. What are we going to do when they run out of military targets to hit? The problem with high-end military and high-end munitions is it's really bad at blowing up dirt and blowing up tents and blowing up people that are hiding. We're good at bunkers and military and launchers and AA systems and conventional arms. We can launch a B-2 from Missouri and hit anywhere in the world within about 30 some hours that we want with pinpoint precision. That's not the problem. If they're not going to give in to you and you've run out of military targets, now what are we going to bomb? What are we going to keep risking the troops to hit? These are the questions that I don't think have good answers and that the administration and the president have not articulated. What are we going to do next? He said, well, we're just going to keep bombing them. Well, we have history for this too. Vietnam is considered, things like Tet is considered a big, massive failure. Linebacker 2 is considered a big, massive failure. But the reality is we bombed them into oblivion and they came back to the table. But you can only bomb the jungle so much. At some point, what's the plan? And I think these are lessons that the administration needs to take to heart. If you listen to the rhetoric carefully, they're already looking for off ramps to this. They're looking for some way to cut a quote unquote deal where they can just declare victory and move on. That wouldn't be the worst thing in one, but here's the problem. Once you start a shooting war, you got to win the shooting war because of the troops involved. We've already lost 6 Americans. We will probably lose more the more this goes on. The Kuwaiti friendly fire, and I'm not going to blame the Kuwaitis because the information we have is you get a drone strike or a missile strike coming in the same time as you have aircraft coming in. Look, these things happen. I'm not excusing it, but the Kuwaitis love us. Going back to the Gulf War, they didn't mean it. I don't think we need to make more of it what it was. Thank God nobody got killed. We move on. We learn, retrain some people, and push ahead. But the casualties are going to go up the longer you do this, especially if you start losing really well-defined targets and you got to go hunting for them. That's when you really do lose aircraft. And the more sorties you send up and the longer you're in combat tempo of ops, the more likely there's accidents and the more likely there's mistakes and the more likely that something goes wrong. The sooner we can wrap this up, the better. But again, what's the plan? To do the comparison that people are making that is not a fair comparison, it's not a good comparison either with Iraq. We went in, we got Saddam to escape. We later captured him and hung him. We took over the country pretty quickly. We had a bad plan for peace. There was a couple mistakes that were made. Bathification was a horrible idea. Not understanding the Iranian piece of how they were going to proxy war and a lot of the quote unquote resistance was actually us fighting Iran. That was misunderstood. That was a horrible thing. We are not going to put boots on the ground in Iran. If we are, it's going to be a disaster. I think they're going to try to figure out a way out of this sooner. But what's the objective? What are you going to declare victory over? Is it the nuclear program that we obliterated last year and supposedly obliterated again this weekend? That's not much of a win. Is it the next dictator up that's going to be a little bit more pliable? Well, maybe, but they'll go right back to doing what they were doing as soon as our attention span's gone somewhere else. We have a midterm election coming up that's going to severely curtail the president's power because unless the Democrats shoot themselves in the foot, which I never, give them credit. They know how to fail when they least should, but let's just say the Democrats get at least the House. That's going to severely curtail this administration's power. Also consider the Israelis are having their own election here in a couple of months. And Netanyahu's on very tenuous ground. And remember, he was politically dead in the water and was probably going to be looking at a sustained criminal trial if October 7th hadn't happened. And October 7th brought us to where we are right now in a lot of ways. These are all moving parts that are not getting covered very well. You have to do your own advocacy on a lot of this stuff. President Trump clearly does not have a plan on what to do if the Iranians don't do what he says because he's bombing them. And if they stick it out, like the Taliban did, like the Viet Cong did, like the Chinese and North Koreans did and got a stalemate. That's the model. And it's not going to be months or years. It's not going to be 20 years like Afghanistan. It's not going to be more than a decade like in Iraq. It's not going to be years and years like in Korea. This is going to be weeks and days because the appetite for this is not good, especially if we start, God forbid, losing a lot of American lives. And elections are coming. And those midterm Congress critters can read polls like everybody else. This is not popular. So I would lay it out this way as somebody who's, you know, been there, done that on Middle East conflicts. Once the shooting starts, you got to win the shooting. What does the win mean? Let's define that real quick, figure out what it is, get it done, and get out of there. You've already done a lot of what you said you wanted to do. We've gotten rid of the Ayatollah Khamenei. We've gotten rid of most of their command structures. It looks like we've hit most of the religious mullahs that were a big problem. But we didn't have a revolution ready to go on the ground, which means you're probably not going to get one of those. Do we just declare victory and go home? I think that's probably the best option the Trump administration has here coming up in partnership with the Israelis and the GCC, which we now have invested. Can we now, with the diminished Iran, put together a peace based on business and greed in the Middle East? I think we can. I think that should be the long-term policy goal. Should we do better and should Congress quit abrogating its power so that presidents can do whatever they want, whether it's tariffs, warfare, or whatever else? Hell yeah, they should. I have no confidence Congress will do that, but that'll be something for the midterm electors to take advantage of. And one other thing I want to bring up, we should have brought it up because of Iran, but we can't get our Congress critters who get elected based on culture warring nonsense and getting on TV to understand this. Any member of Congress and any elected official in federal office that does not know how to soundbite and put together a plan and say, we need to figure out how to deal with drones cheaply, replicatably, immediately, and how to handle a drone strike is doing a dereliction of duty because that's the world we live in now. We've seen it. We've seen what drones do in Ukraine. We've seen what drones do in the Middle East now. We better figure out a way to handle drones that doesn't involve multi-million-dollar single-use missiles to shoot down a $20,000 drone. We have some things to do that. We have some cheap, replicatable things. We need to really examine what's going on in Ukraine. But Congress critters that want to beat their chest over, the Department of Defense and they're pro-flag and you want to wave the flag and you'll rah-rah about the U.S. military. U.S. military better figure out really quickly how to deal with cheap drones and a cheap way to fight them and a cheap way to bring them down. Because it's not sustainable to be using, THAAD missions and manpads and all this other real high-end equipment to just shoot down $20, $30, $40,000 drones. We're going to lose that battle at some point, and they're going to get through and kill somebody. And we already know they killed, not to get personal here, but I got really upset with the coverage on these 6 Americans that got killed. And a DOD official, Sean Parnell, who we last saw, not being able to pursue elected office because of his, abuse allegations in his own family, and I'll leave it at that, came out and was like, well, this was a hardened facility. No. Having a trailer with concrete retaining walls around it, which is pretty much every facility in the Middle East, if you deployed to the Middle East at all, this is what you lived in. Your tent, your hooch, your trailer, whatever you were sleeping in was surrounded by sandbags, and then you had retaining walls around it because it was designed for car bombs and IEDs, and God forbid a infiltrator comes in with a suicide vest, that sort of stuff. There was nothing covering it from above. Now, if you were in Balad like I was, they eventually built coverings over, the base exchange and over the fitness and over the defects that have multi-layered metal frame, sheds that would somewhat protect you from overhead ordnance coming in. Things like the C-Rams, there's only so many of them you can have. You can't put them everywhere. And I say that as somebody who's been directly underneath the fire. One of them things is they shot off incoming and saved a bunch of people's lives. It is a interesting experience, but you can't have those everywhere. Just admit the truth that, look, incoming hit a trailer. We can't harden everything. This is the nature of war. Quit lying about it. This is the coverage that I get upset about. Is like, let's be honest about warfare over there. We're not particularly equipped to handle all these drones right now. We've done a really good job. The Emiratis have done an excellent job. I think they're in the 90 percentile of what they're shooting down. The Israelis have the Iron Dome. We need to learn these lessons in America because we can say, well, America can't be attacked. You trust somebody can't roll something up against the southern border and launch some stuff across? That can happen. We better figure this stuff out, and future conflicts are just gonna have more and more of this stuff. I wanna wrap up these thoughts on Iran in, this way really quickly. Um, I, uh I struggle with how to talk about veteran stuff. I really do. I get asked about it. I get brought on specifically like, "Hey, I need a veteran to come in and talk about this." And I always feel weird about it. I don't speak for all veterans. I can only speak for myself. I can only tell you my experience. When we put troops in combat, whether it's the 2 West Virginia Guardsmen that got one shot and one killed in DC, or whether it's these 6 military personnel, which were with naming holding the names still until they get the families identified. Um, these 6 people that were killed in Kuwait, it looks like, um, because ordnance came in and hit the trailer they were in and killed them and wounded a bunch of other ones. Here's the harsh truth that I'll just lay out. Troops are gonna get hurt. Troops are gonna get killed. That's what we're there for. If you're scared we're just going to get hurt and you're not focused on let's accomplish a mission, don't send us. Once the shooting starts, figure out a way to get the mission done as quickly and cleanly as possible so that you can get them back out. But while they're there, don't pretend like they're not in harm's way. And don't pretend like you can mitigate the harm's way part. Let them do what they're trained to do. Let them fight. Let them do whatever their particular job to support the fighters are. Get an objective, achieve the objective, and then get them back home. And then we can have conversations about what was right, wrong, and indifferent once they're back out of harm's way. We seem to keep doing this backwards where we know the American military is mighty and can do amazing things and you can order it to go do it and they will probably do it. But the part you can't order is what's the cost. We have been having this debate about how much the VA costs in America, and there's plenty of fraud, waste, and abuse. I'm there. I know. I see it. I went through the process. I've had people look at me dead square in the face and go, "We can just write this up so that you get 100% disability." And I'm like, "No, you're going to write it the way it's written because I want it to be right." I've been in those rooms. That all happens. I understand that. But don't have a global war on terrorism for 20 years and then try to get cheap on the cost on the back end. Whenever this conflict and future conflicts, when those veterans come back and need help, veterans don't get cheaper as they get older. The GWAT guys, my generation, I'm 45 now. I was actually already on duty, active duty when 9/11 happened, and I was 20 years old at the time. I'm 45 now. My healthcare is going to get more expensive. Okay. I go to Duke tomorrow for another follow up. It doesn't get less cheap as veterans get older. But you think about that before you put them in harm's way. Don't write the check and say, "We want you to go full tilt boogie for freedom and justice and go do this fighting over there." And then start getting cheap on the back end and say, "Well, we spend too much on veterans." That's not fair. That's not right. And that's not sustainable. So as you watch these troops struggle and some of them die and some of them get wounded, and American US military medicine is one of the wonders of the world. If you were ever in the Blot Theater Hospital and I was there, it's one of the most remarkable things you ever said. If they came in the door breathing, it was like 96, 93% that they're going to survive. It's incredible. But when this bunch of veterans from Iran, from whatever conflict comes after that, from whatever conflict comes in the next 15, 20 years, when those veterans start retiring out like the GWAT guys like me have done so, and we're out and we're back into the VA system now. Just remember how the coverage was today of our American military can do anything. And to quote the president, sometimes people die in war. That happens. He's right. It does. Vets are expensive. Don't cheap us out on the back end. That doesn't mean there ain't fraud, waste, and abuse in the VA system to clean up. But understand it's not going to be cheap. So, Iran, we don't look like we have a plan. We can support the troops and still question the plan. I want the troops to win the shooting war. We can do the talking part later. This administration needs to find an off ramp sooner rather than later because they clearly don't understand what their objective really is. And the sooner we get done and get out of there, the better it's going to be for everybody. I don't think you're gonna be able to do full-blown regime change just by air attacks here because I think they'll just outlast us because they only have to outlast us a matter of weeks or months. It's not gonna be that long, and they can read history like everybody else. They know what the Viet Cong did and the Taliban did and everybody else. I think they're gonna try to wait us out, hit the military targets, let's get out of there and go from there and work on this new alliance that the GCC and Israel seems to have budding. See if we can build on that and get a little more Middle East peace there with Iran diminished. Um, Pray for the troops, support the troops. You questioning our government is separate from supporting the troops. We can do both at the same time. It is your duty as an American citizen to do both at the same time. And we will continue to try to comment in a responsible manner. Notice I didn't put out anything over the weekend. Wait, let it breathe. Let's see what we're doing. Now we have a good handle on what we are doing right and not doing right. The military is performing brilliantly. The plan does not look sound. Congress needs to step in and exert their authority. War power stuff is a joke. They're not going to be able to do anything with that. But they should be able to reel in this administration, and they shouldn't have given away executive power, both parties, to both parties' presidents for the last 20, 30 years, because this is where we're at. So maybe we can start reeling that back in. I would love to hear your thoughts. Put it in the comments. Heardtellshow@gmail.com. You can also find me on social media, Heard Tell Show, or my personal social media on Twitter, Four for the Fire. A lot of food and non-politics stuff on there these days because I'm doing culinary school because that's what I do to keep my soul clean enough to go do all this politics stuff. But yeah, just one time in my life, I would like us to start a shooting war with a plan on how to end it before we start doing the shooting, just to see what it's like. Doesn't mean we don't go do our jobs. Don't mean that there ain't good that can come of it. But we keep doing this back assward, and I would like for us to get some government and people that hold a government accountable to do it the other way, just one time before I die. That would be great, and that would be good for the country and be good for the world. So I appreciate you listening. We will put this on all the platforms. We will start doing more media coming up. We're looking into. We have to change a couple things. Back end wise that I won't bore you with because of the way technology changes. And I go, for those of you that are curious about the cancer stuff, I go tomorrow for my cancer follow up. I'm hoping to get a 90-day observation cycle so we can get back to work here for a while. I appreciate you all. You give us the most precious thing you have, your time. We never take it for granted. Thank you very much for your support. Support the troops while they're in harm's way. Keep a prayer or a good thought for them, and let us know what you think. We will respond. We will talk about it. We always welcome varying opinions, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you're well. I hope you're well fed, and we hope to talk to you soon. See, I'm so new to this, I don't actually know how to turn it off. So just, a little bit of an outtake there. Y'all be well.